Here are two tiny retro handles that are super cute. I'm looking at two of the only truly usable nano or keychain devices. These are, in my opinion, excellent gifts and time killers if you're a long commuter or a queue waiterer, and if you don't want to sit on your phone all the time doom scrolling. I'm talking about the RG Nano and the FunkeyS. And there's actually quite a lot to talk about here, so let's get into it. First, let's talk about the FunkeyS. So, because they kind of started it all. And then Anbernic thought, hey, let's do the same thing, just metal. Seriously, they even used FunkeyS's firmware, open source firmware. Anyway, I like the FunkeyS because there's a lot of love here. Love in the sense that they really thought this through with the keychain on the device. So Anbernic did that as well. But also keychain cases. So I ordered it with this case, which I quite liked, but on their website there are a whole lot of choices for you to go through. And this to me is actually their biggest selling point, is the fact that they come with these lovely cases. As opposed to the RG Nano, which leaves you thinking, I am going to scratch the shit out of this. Anbernic did release this case, but I'm not going to spend like $30 on shipping for that ugly thing. Okay, so the software is pretty much identical, but I do have a few comments here. The RG Nano, when I first unboxed it, booted into this god-awful back end, like an Open Dingix style back end. They call it G-Menu 2X, which is just ugly and confusing and doesn't make sense considering I think this is geared towards non-tech nerd people. The FunkeyS booted immediately into the front end, but it does also give you access to this weird back end, and I don't know why. Well, I do know why, but why? So one of Anbernic's reasons for doing this is the fact that they've included a media player. If you want to play videos on here, I did get sent a 128 gig one, so I could put videos on here, but why? And then it does have a music player. Now this uses I forget the name of the GNU, whatever. It's an old system. And I did get some music on here. And I spent a little bit of time trying to get used to it. But it really is quite fiddly to get used to. The buttons aren't very intuitive. One nice thing is that you can press the shoulder buttons to skip through songs, which I did find kind of nice. But, you really need to be committed to this. I think there's a massive missed opportunity here. I don't think it's a huge market. Obviously, not lots of people are queuing up for an MP3 player. But I do think there is a real interest in unplugged devices that play music like they did in the olden days with MP3s. While it's possible with this thing, it's just not usable for most real people in the real world. Plus, you need to do so with this little dongle. That again, like another hurdle to using this as a music player. It's such a cool concept. And I really hope that there's another iteration where there's a redesigned interface for the music player and there's just a normal audio jack. This is a real cool retro option for some people. I think what Anbernic were trying to do is differentiate themselves from the FunkeyS, and because they included a high quality digital audio converter, so, the audio to your headphones is actually pretty decent. But alas, the journey to get to actually play audio with this, the journey is just too arduous. I also want to mention that Anbernic included this clock feature, which I did use for a little while. I just thought it's such a nice novelty thing to have on your desk, little retro game as a clock. But then you do need to charge it. Obviously, it's an LCD screen, it's chowing the battery. And so you do need to charge it fairly regularly, so I ended up stopping that. But overall, this front end is very nice. It's a really nice front end and manages games very well. There's some cool themes to choose and just overall a very nice and easy to use front end. And that brings me into the sort of contentious elephant in the room, and that's ROMs. Now, Funkey have done the honorable thing. They've shipped with indie and hacked ROMs that are legal. Anbernic, on the other hand, have shipped with lots and lots of games, and technically that is illegal. But, it's a sort of moral gray line that they're walking, because at the end of the day, this device is designed for your ROMs. But then at least it's the user's decision to use their own ROMs or use illegal ROMs, whereas Anbernic have just, flagrantly ignored that option. But it's not all gremlins and gargoyles, because all you need to do is plug it into your laptop with a micro USB cable. You press the menu button and you scroll down to Mount USB. Press the A button. Are you sure? Yes. Now you are mounted. Then you'll see it pop up on your screen, or just open the drive up, find it in your browser. You will see all the ROM folders here. They are quite well labeled, so Game Boy Color, Game Gear, there's no sort of code here. It's easy to navigate. And then you'll just drag all your ROMs over into these folders. And you'll see here, I've also dragged some artwork here. You can also use Scraper, skrper.net. There's an app there that you can download to get art scraping, and you'll see that the album art is the same name as the ROM, just with .png. So you can either do that manually or use something like scraper.net to sort that out. The one little thing that you might need to sort out, and I'll put the information on the screen now, is you will need your PS1 BIOS files and the GBA, the Game Boy Advance BIOS files. Google is your friend. Just pop that into the ROMs folder. So put the BIOS file into the ROM folder. There's no sort of confusion there. Just put it into the ROM folder. Now we just eject it. Say, are you sure? It says in progress. All right. But with all that being said, I did actually enjoy a lot of these indie games, like this little paddle game. You know, these are also games that you can play one-handed. A lovely little retro experience. And now we're going to jump into playability of these devices. And this is where the sort of rubber meets the proverbial road. And this is still going back to the software side of it, but this does have auto resume. And with this one, you just close it up, it powers down and opens up in your last game. So with the Nano, what you do is you'll press and hold the power button. It'll shut down. Give it a second just to power down. Now you power it up again and it'll just power up where you left off. So while the Nano does come with thousands and thousands of games, it's actually these are the sorts of devices that you add a few ROMs on. So definitely geared towards people who own their own ROMs, and you just add a few, power down, power up, and kind of maybe just even add one ROM. So for instance, I'm thinking maybe I'm going to add Cat Trap or one of those sort of puzzle games and just have that and power off and on and play this somewhere. Just have this hanging somewhere. And then physically, in terms of gameplay, the FunkeyS has these recessed dome switches, which means you're actually pressing little clicky buttons underneath the D-pad and the action buttons. While the Anbernic employs proper retro-styled rubber membranes, which gives you a very authentic feel and strangely a better experience. So theoretically, the dome switches should be better because of the style of device and how small it is. You need more direct pressing, but because they've recessed these buttons, the win definitely goes to the Anbernic on the actual playability of the buttons. So unfortunately for the plucky FunkeyS, the Anbernic definitely has it beat in terms of playability. Like, this is a fairly difficult for this kind of device to play platformer, and I'm playing it, and it's more gamer centric. If you're looking to buy this not as a novelty item, but to actually play games, you're definitely going to want to look at the Anbernic as your option. I think here's where it all comes together. The most important part is design and ergonomics, the overall feel, how everything comes together. Like I said, the FunkeyS has some great cases to choose from and some great colors. Plus, we haven't actually mentioned the fact that it flips. I mean, I showed it once, but the fact that it flips makes it quite exceptional in terms of just usability for every single day. Whereas with the RG Nano, you're just gonna have to accept that this thing is going to get scratched if you're gonna use it as an actual keychain device. As a Christmas gift, I'd say the FunkeyS is definitely the best choice because you can choose the color, you can choose the case that best suits the person that you're thinking of. I had my daughter in mind when I chose this color, not so much the case. I just liked this case and I think it's the most durable one, and I think it's going to sit on her satchel quite well. And both have pretty decent screens. I don't want to labor on this point too much because these screens are tiny and they're difficult to read no matter what you do. But I mean, here's tiny writing and I can read it, and it's the same for the FunkeyS. It's not as bad as you'd think. Obviously, if you've got terrible eyesight, get some glasses. But it's not as bad as you'd think. The Anbernic is a Game Boy style metal device. I want to say this is my favorite, but that's because it's a gamer-centric device. It plays games well as a tiny little device will go. Obviously, neither of these devices are winning the Long Play Device of the Year award. I would say the Anbernic has the Funkey beat on ergonomics and gameplay, although not by a massive margin. The FunkeyS's buttons are just a little bit harder to press and a little bit creaky. Let me know in the comments which overall look do you prefer. I honestly can't choose here. I love the color options of the FunkeyS and I love the textured metal of the Anbernic. I just love small things that I can play with in my hands. Here are two tiny retro handhelds that are super cute.